be aware of the format of the letter writing. You must have learned it in your previous classes as well. And also you must be aware that there are two kinds of letters. The first one is the formal letter, and the second one is the informal letter. And the method or the format in which we write the formal letter or the informal letter is slightly different. It's not that the format of writing both the letters is completely different. It is slightly different because as we are aware that whenever we are writing a formal letter, we have to maintain a formal tone in the letter. We are not very much familiar with the person, or we may not be even aware about that person. So we have to maintain the tone of the letter in a formal nature, and we write the informal letter to those whom we know very well, with whom we are very much familiar, with our family members, your father, your mother, your siblings, your cousins, or your friends. Informal letters are written to these people. However, whenever we are talking about the formal letter is written to a person. It is an official letter written to people in their formal capacity in a particular organization we are writing. See, whenever we are writing a formal letter, you must have seen that we usually do not write to a person, but we write to a designation, the particular post which is assigned to an individual. For example, in your school, suppose you are writing an application for a leave to your principal. So that would be a kind of formal letter. And whenever you are writing this letter, how you will address? You will write to the principal. It does not matter here who is the principal of your school. Today, suppose if we talk about our school, Mr. Joseph is the principal of the school. Suppose next year the principal will change, or suppose you are writing the application for leave to your class teacher. So be you in class 6 or class 7 or class 8 or class 9. Every year your class teacher will change. But in your formal application, you will write to the class teacher. So here we do not talk about that particular individual, but we talk about the post, the designation that is assigned to the person. What kind of letter comes under the category of the formal letter? They deal with the subjects such as inquiry, orders, transfer of money, reference, request, booking for something, some complaint, some loss, or apology. Or maybe something other can also come under when you are requesting something. But these are some of the common types in which we write the formal letter. So today we will discuss about the layout or the format of the formal letter. All of you must have read it in your earlier classes also. So just a revision. Layout of formal letter. So whenever we are talking about the layout of the formal letter, it starts with the address of the person who is writing the letter. Suppose if I am writing the letter, in the starting of the letter, I'll start it with my address where I'm living. So the first is the writer's address, or you also call it sender. The one sending the letter. So complete address of that person will be written here. After that, the next comes the date. Date on which you are writing the letter. Commonly we use, suppose if we talk about the today's date, 5th December 2020. Mostly we use this format for writing the date in a letter. Some people also write, or sometimes people use the separators in the date. When we use the dots or the dashes for writing the date, that you should avoid while you are writing the date in a letter. While you write your date in your notebook when you are starting a chapter, that's okay that you use the separators. For example, this kind of format you should avoid while you are writing a letter. So after the date, then comes the name and address of the receiver. Name and address of the receiver. Here I am mentioning the name, but it actually means the designation to the principal. If you are writing to a newspaper, to the editor. Suppose you are writing a letter to the Prime Minister, you will never write to Mr. Narendra Modi. You will always write to the Prime Minister. So actually you have to mention here the designation of the person and the complete address along with the pin code. You have to mention this is the third step. After this comes the salutation. What is salutation? Where you actually address to that person. We write in the letter, dear sir, dear ma'am. That is the salutation. Or if you know that the number of person there are more than one, then you can write dear sir. Or suppose if you are writing the letter to a person about whom you are not aware of the gender of the person, whether male or female, in that case you write dear sir oblique man. So this will be the salutation of your letter. After the salutation, next comes the heading, or that we commonly known as the subject of the letter. From here onwards, I am writing here. The fifth point will be the headings or subject. In the heading or the subject of the letter, you will write in just one sentence what is the purpose of writing the letter. That indicates what is written in the letter throughout. For example, application for 1 day leave. So that indicates that okay, whatsoever the reason, whatsoever the cause, but the applicant wants a leave for 1 day. So that is mentioned here in the heading or the subject after the salutation. Then after this comes the next, that is the opening statement. What is the opening statement of the letter? It should either be in response to the earlier communication or have a reference to the topic of the letter. Sometimes both these things can be more or less similar. The opening statement of the letter and the heading or the subject of the letter. Suppose if you are writing a letter to someone, suppose you receive the letter first and you are writing in response to that letter. You are writing a letter which is a reply of a letter that you received earlier. So in that case, what will be your opening statement? You will write in reference to the letter received on such and such date. So that will make it clear that why are you writing this letter apart from the heading. Otherwise, suddenly from where this subject came. So that opening statement will give the reference to the earlier letter that you have received. So that will be the opening statement. Then after that comes the body of the letter. Body of the letter means where you actually write your letter. Whatever the reason, suppose you are taking a leave, what is the cause? You are not well, you are moving out of station. Why are you moving out of station? Everything that you will write in the body of the letter. And you have to divide this body of the letter into the paragraphs. Suppose if you are writing an application to read, then it does not require to divide it into so many paragraphs. But in many other cases, suppose if you are filing a complaint against a product that you purchase. So first you will describe about the purchase that I purchased so and so product on such and such date. Then you will write about the complaint. What is the problem with the product? If you have already filed a complaint, then you will also mention about the things that I have already filed a complaint against this on this and this date, but no action has been taken. So according to the things that you want to mention in your letter, you have to divide the letter into paragraphs, and each paragraph should be in reference to one thing only. Like when we write the essay, you must have learned that in essay also we divide the whole content into a number of paragraphs, and in each paragraph we talk about one thing only. We do not mix up the things. And especially when you are writing a letter, you are communicating someone. So the idea of your letter must be very, very clear so that the next person can understand. Otherwise, the purpose of writing the letter will be defeated. So divide body into the paragraphs according to the things that you want to mention in the letter. After that comes the concluding statement. What is the concluding statement? Where finally, what do you want? So it varies according to the letter. For example, if you are writing an application, kindly grant me leave for 1 day. Or I want the response of my letter as soon as possible. I want my problem to be resolved as soon as possible. So that gives the concluding statement of the letter, that finally what do you want? What do you expect in return of this letter? In return of this formal letter. Then after comes the subscription. What is the subscription? Whenever you are writing a formal letter, your subscriptions will be yours faithfully, yours truly, or yours sincerely. Commonly we use these subscriptions at the end of the letter, and after the subscription, in the subscription you have to just mention any of these three phrases. After that, at last comes the signature. When you are writing a letter, it is mandatory to put your signature, or you just mention your full name. For example, if I am writing a formal letter, I will not write only Neha. I have to write a complete address, Neha Tiwari. If you are talking to the person in a formal capacity, then you should also mention your designation. If not in the formal capacity, then you will not write your designation. Suppose if someone else is writing an application to take the admission in the school, that student will write only the name. Okay, but if you are a student here in this school and you are writing the person, you are writing an application for the name, you will write your name with your class and section, because your class and section tells you that you are a student from this particular class or section. So there it works as your designation. However, a student who is outside the school, he is writing an application for taking the admission, then he will not mention, because he is not the student in this school. He will be in formal relationship with the other people of this school when he will get the admission here. Although the person to whom he is writing, the principal, that individual is at a formal capacity in the school. Okay, so there, wherever it is required, the designation will be mentioned. If it is not required, the designation will not be mentioned. And if someone is put the signature in the letter, suppose in the letter if I am writing my signature, then after the signature, what do you need to do? You have to write your full name within brackets and all in capital letters only. Along with the signature, if you are writing your name must be within the brackets in all the letters, capital letters, uppercase. If you are writing only your name, suppose if I am writing only this, then this much is sufficient. But if I put my signature, then just below the signature, this has to be mentioned. And sometimes the people also write the date along with the signature, but it is not necessary to write the date along with the signature. Why? Because the dates are already mentioning here, and this is clearly the date on which you are writing the letter. So this is the format or the layout of the formal letter. What should be the sequence? What are the things that you have to mention first? What comes after? You have to follow exactly the same format for writing a formal letter.